Good morning. It's a pleasure to connect with you at Interop Digital. I'm absolutely honored to be here. As we all know, 9 months ago, the world changed overnight. And for all of us, the way we live, work, and what we need to focus on changed, also overnight. And at the time, few of us knew what to expect. I remember in May talking to the CIO of a large US restaurant chain, and she told me that with COVID-19, she thought all of her IT projects would be put on hold. But actually, the exact opposite happened. Her projects and her function became critical for the restaurant's survival. And it's because overnight they had to switch to remote sales, they had to change the way they managed and distributed inventory. And there are so many stories like this where businesses are having to change, and it's IT stepping up to lead that change at an unprecedented scale and pace. But if COVID-19 in the last 9 months have taught us anything, it is this. Our ability as a society to build resilience and to adapt to change is crucial. As Microsoft has worked with organizations in every industry around the world, our biggest learning is that no business is immune to a crisis. And also, building resilience is an ongoing effort. By definition, resilience is about failing, learning, and adapting. But companies with a strong digital foundation have a platform to be able to understand their business's weaknesses and opportunities and to very quickly pivot. We've also learned that there's no back to normal. Some of these new ways of working, new ways of connecting with customers, and new ways of delivering value are here to stay. So instead of working to go back to normal, we have to reimagine what normal could be together. And one thing is very clear. Technology and the technologists like you will shape it. So how do you put yourself and your team in the driver's seat? That answer is the digital foundation and the platform I just talked about. But it's just not the role of central IT, it's the role of all technologists. And by the way, this is already happening. Our recent Gartner analysis found that when you break down technology users and technology producers, about half are technology users. That means a huge population of technology producers are creating solutions to do their jobs. This explosion of development has one sole driver: apps. 500 million new apps will be built in the next 5 years. And that's because when you look at the immense variety of business needs, there's just not an app for every function. As a result, app backlog increases because building new apps takes time. And meanwhile, business stakeholders are using platforms like no-code and low-code tools to build solutions that work for them now. So what does this mean for you? On one hand, you want to embrace that innovation no matter where it originates. But on the other hand, security, privacy, and compliance are non-negotiable. You also need to make sure that you're getting the most from your developers and helping them make an impact quickly. This is a tough place to be. But what if you didn't have to choose? What if you could build a digital foundation to bridge the app gap while maintaining security and governance, and also empowering developers to make a bigger impact faster? You can look around and see companies doing just this. And I'd love to take a look at how SNCF, the French National Railway, sees this opportunity.
Je suis Henri Pideau. Je suis le directeur de la performance et la transformation numérique du groupe SNCF.
Je suis Magali Dupin, donc responsable amélioration continue au sein du Technicentre industriel de Saint-Pierre-des-Corps et du Technicentre de maintenance. Le digital est un outil qui nous permet de nous améliorer, on en est tous persuadés. Voilà. Mais c'est comment le porter à l'ensemble de nos collaborateurs.
L'enjeu de ce programme, c'était d'amener le digital dans l'ensemble de l'entreprise.
L'idée, c'est le digital utile pour tous et à n'importe quel moment.
Avec les réseaux sociaux d'entreprise, on a lancé les Yammers. Et avec cet outil digital, en fin de compte, ça s'est amplifié et ça a été national. Voilà. Donc ça, c'est un des premiers succès de notre programme Digital pour tous.
Je suis Sylvain Martin. Je travaille pour le groupe SNCF. Mon rôle est de promouvoir et d'accompagner le développement rapide d'applications. On a complètement dématérialisé le processus de remontée des incidents qui apparaissaient sur le réseau ferroviaire.
Power Apps, c'est avec Flow, avec Power BI, c'est un ensemble qui permet réellement de digitaliser les processus métiers.
Et on est arrivé en quelques jours à créer une application dont la donnée est stockée sur SharePoint. Et toute l'analyse en temps réel tombe sur Power BI. On a simplement les incidents qui remontent et qui sont analysés et traitables au niveau établissement.
Lorsqu'on a accompagné le déploiement de ces outils digitaux et l'explication et la donnée en vie, tout agent qu'il travaille de nuit ou qu'il travaille de journée, il était en mesure d'exprimer des innovations ou des idées d'amélioration de son travail au quotidien. Sur le processus même de la maintenance, on a une application qu'on a nommée DigiBogie.
On remonte des bogies de A à Z. Au départ, on faisait tout sur papier. Il pouvait y avoir des risques d'erreur, etc.
70% des bogies appairées ressortaient insatisfaisants. Donc on était obligé de renouveler l'opération.
Et le fait de passer par une application, on est sûr que les calculs sont bons, que les appairages sont faits comme il faut.
Donc DigiBogie fait partie de ces grandes innovations pour pouvoir fiabiliser et rendre nettement plus robuste notre manière de produire.
Podría presentarme su letra del coche.
Nous avons mis cette application qui s'appelle Application linguistique numérique ALN pour faire plus court. Et ça permet d'avoir vraiment un dialogue et moins de tension avec les chauffeurs parce qu'ils ont des temps à respecter.
Może wprowadzić mnie list z samochodu.
Donc on a conçu une plateforme d'échange via les tablettes et qui permet justement d'avoir une communication facilitée les uns envers les autres.
L'arrivée de ces nouveaux outils, Power Apps, Flow, Power BI, en fin de compte, a permis aux métiers, aux établissements de se rendre autonomes dans l'usage de cette plateforme.
Je ne suis pas développeur et pour autant j'ai très vite pris à l'outil Power Apps. Grâce à cette expérience de 2 ans en établissement où j'ai pu créer des applications locales, j'ai aujourd'hui rejoint ISNCF pour accompagner des projets groupes et filiales.
Je suis Cassandra Cornillo, directrice de l'école numérique au sein de la direction ISNCF. On a proposé un parcours avec du présentiel et du e-learning qui permet à chacun de trouver son bonheur dans les formations et dans la montée en compétences sur l'outil Power Apps.
Pour nous, l'objectif est de faire émerger davantage de projets par le terrain, pour le terrain.
Aujourd'hui, on a formé plus de 738 personnes depuis début janvier sur SharePoint, sur Power BI et maintenant sur Power Apps. Et ce sont des formations qui fonctionnent super bien.
Je suis Ludovic Malandra, je travaille à la direction performance et transformation numérique du groupe SNCF et je crée une synergie entre les différents métiers, notamment les SI, l'école numérique, les établissements, pour leur permettre de travailler autrement et d'apporter au groupe de nouveaux usages. Du fait qu'on est un grand groupe, on est obligé d'avoir une gouvernance et également un monitoring de tout ce qui se passe sur le terrain au niveau de la Power Platform. Et nous avons vite vu qu'il était nécessaire de créer un store pour partager notre expérience. On retrouve toutes les fonctionnalités nécessaires pour réaliser l'application. Et l'intérêt également de ces applications, c'est de les mettre en avant celles qui ont du succès.
La question qu'il faut avoir en tête pour accompagner cette autonomie, c'est quel est le rôle de la DSI finalement ? Et en fin de compte, on a travaillé sur un vrai positionnement de la DSI sur des thèmes très particuliers qui sont la mise à disposition de référentiels fiables, l'ouverture des systèmes d'information régaliens avec des API, de telle façon que les métiers puissent s'approprier, puissent consommer ces référentiels, ces API, de manière transversale. Et on a repositionné la stratégie de la DSI sur ces thèmes-là pour qu'ils puissent accueillir aussi cette plateforme et ne la combattent pas, je dirais, parce qu'ils auraient peur de perdre une partie de leur prérogative vis-à-vis des métiers.
Je sais pas, je le pose là, putain. Ça me coûte rien de bien voir.
Et...
There are 3 things I love about that story. First, when SNCF needed an app to accelerate train wagon to train chassis pairing, there was no off-the-shelf app that could possibly do that. And that's the app gap in real life. So as a result, they needed to build something that was customized for that specific situation. Second, they didn't have enough developers to build that app gap on their own, so they needed to put the power in the hands of their employees. And third, they needed IT to play a different role than they had historically done. In order to develop these customized apps, leverage the expertise of the people closest to the problem, and maintain a secure and compliant organization, SNCF opened their doors to democratizing digital capabilities with the low-code development tools of the Microsoft Power Platform. And their employees responded. They quickly grew to more than 150 apps in production, with more on the way. And each app solves a business challenge somewhere in the organization. The role of IT has become a facilitator and an enabler rather than a gatekeeper. They provided reference apps and architectures to guide citizen developers with best practices. They used APIs to expose system information so it could be used in new apps consistently. They chose to embrace this new paradigm rather than resist it. Today, their central IT department enables technology producers across the organization with infrastructure and governance and support to innovate and to drive transformation. But is an app always the solution? No. Not every business problem can be solved with an app. Sometimes you need business automation, another key to building a digital foundation for your organization. If IT can remove or streamline repetitive or manual tasks, you can potentially save hundreds of hours of productivity every week across your organization. Automation, rather than a new app, was the right approach for T-Mobile as they worked through their recent integration with Sprint. And if you've ever been through this before, you know that mergers create massive pressure on IT. Their IT team needed to bring together the tools that supported both companies into a single infrastructure. For example, T-Mobile's go-to-market approval system, Orbit, was one tool, and Sprint had a similar system on their side. Truly integrating across these systems will take some time, since training and back-end data integration is not a fast process. But they needed a way to sync approvals today, so they chose to automate the process. Now, every time an entry is created in Orbit, it reaches a certain stage of approval and is automatically input into the legacy Sprint system. This allows the team to use the tools they're accustomed to without having to jump between interfaces and learn a new system at the same time. This automated process took the developer just 20 minutes to set up, and it's a great example of where low-code automation can quickly solve a problem and allow your IT teams to focus on the work that adds greater, longer-term value for the business. These stories, where IT teams are building a digital foundation that serves the entire organization, demonstrates the power of resilience in the face of a challenge. We're also seeing amazing creativity enabled by digital solutions, and this is to meet the reality of what businesses need today. And as a society, we all have an opportunity to fundamentally rethink how technology enables our world and how it shapes our new normal. Thank you for everything you're doing to help the world evolve. Now, for the remainder of our time, I'm excited to connect with Lenny Heyman, Interop's content director, to talk more about the role IT brings to building resilience and shaping tomorrow. Hi, Lenny. It's nice to connect with you.
Great to see you. Thank you for being here, Alysa. And thanks so much for being at Interop Digital and sharing some insights into the changing dynamic between IT pros and their organizations. And I'd love to ask you a few questions. Let's kick it off and get your thoughts about the COVID situation and whether companies are accelerating their efforts to change and become more digital, or are you seeing those efforts slowing down?
It's a great question, and I talked about in my opening meeting with the CIO of a large restaurant chain in the US, and she actually was talking about how her projects were accelerated because of COVID-19. And we see this all over the world. So as companies needed to very quickly, almost overnight, shift from in-person customer service environments, salespeople in store, moving that 100% to remote, and needing a technology platform to do that. And then we've also seen some pretty major changes to the supply chain and commerce side of the world as well. So needing to be able to do things like contactless shopping, curbside pickup. These are all major changes to an organization's infrastructure, and IT's been at the center of being able to make these changes and to accelerate it.
Great. And any specific examples over the last period of where IT has stepped in and really made a difference in terms of some of those changes?
A great example is Mercedes-Benz and their U.S. branch. Their IT leader had started to dabble with a pilot around how you could do a remote service center. And then COVID-19 hit, and they had to speed that up. And so he actually went from a pilot to full production across 400 stores in a matter of less than a couple months. And so now they're able to service vehicles using HoloLens 2 and Dynamics 365 Remote Assist. And it allows their technicians to not only collaborate, but then also communicate with their customers in a completely remote environment.
That's great. Thank you for that. And let's dig into a little bit more about sort of the relationship between IT and the organization in these times. Any advice in terms of what IT pros can do or think about in terms of staying connected to the business in these work apart times? Anything that you've seen from the field that you can share with us?
Absolutely. So I think, some of the things that we've talked about is, enabling this remote environment, so remote work, and how do you get the most out of bringing together people across the organization in a remote capacity. And so I think IT, really being able to enable that, foster collaboration, ongoing employee communication, different apps and things like that that can allow employees to stay connected even in a remote situation. The other thing that I'm seeing too is I'm seeing the IT and developer side of the house really accelerate their learning path. So being able to use new technologies to be able to take advantage and also adapt to what's happening in the world today.
And there's sort of a dark side too. We talked about shadow IT, of course, and lots of other sort of major changes going on, cloud, for example, and the advent and use of AI. Are those things threats to IT pros, or how do they turn those around and actually become more useful and important through using those technologies and partnering with the business?
It's a great question, and I think the thing that the cloud-based services brings to the IT world is that baseline and foundation of governance and security and protocols, as well as certifications. And so IT being able to take advantage of those solutions and those services in a cloud-based environment is critical. And then you see things like automation, and I talked about the app gap and the ongoing need for apps. Having IT at the center of that and having a set of technology that allows them to quickly respond, I think is incredibly important. And then AI really in a cloud environment with IT at the center, it allows for things like greater insight, a 360-degree view of their environment, and allows them to be able to bring insights to the business and then also take action on those insights, which I think has really brought IT and business leaders together in a new way that we hadn't seen historically.
Yeah, that's a great message. Thanks. Hey, let's play a little game here. You're a successful executive. What if somebody walked in tomorrow and asked you to become the CIO at Microsoft? What would some of your priorities be?
Yes, well, we'll see if Kurt Delbene, our CIO, agrees. But I do think one of the things that I think he does extremely well and I would model is just the ability to, standardize on third-party applications. IT historically has built a lot of what I would call homegrown applications. They tend to be very siloed. They aren't sort of connected to the broad infrastructure. And so I think we've made this move at Microsoft where, sort of first party equals third party. And I think the work there, has been very instrumental for us. And so continuing that. And then I do think that connection between IT and the business leaders is incredibly important to move an organization forward in a both, sort of rapid pace, but also in a making sure that everyone is aligned against that. And so I think that ongoing connection of IT and business is incredibly important. And
so you're sitting in the big desk there, and you've got to do some hiring. What are you looking for in your IT pros? What are some of the important characteristics and capabilities that you would want on your team?
I think there's three things I would say. One is a growth mindset. Knowing how rapidly everything is changing right now, there's just not room for a fixed mindset of thinking that it can only be done one way. So looking for new and innovative and different ways to do things, I think, is the first. The second is, that collaboration, being able to collaborate across the organization. And then the third is, being able to rapidly learn new technology. It's changing, the landscape's changing so fast. And so how do you have a continuous learning environment? Because it's not just about going and getting a certification once and having that span over years. You have to have, a certain set of baseline certifications and then continually learn and understand as new technology evolves and adapts and comes to market.
Those are great insights. Appreciate that. Alysa, thanks so much. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're busy, but sharing your insights and experience with us at Interop Digital has been really fantastic today. Thanks. And thanks to all who've been watching, and have a great day.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.